Good afternoon, it's Ed Sheats, and welcome to the Syracuse Builders Exchange seminar on mechanics, liens, and payment bond claims. This is my 30th year doing this class, and is the first year I've done it without being able to actually look at you people and see you when I'm in, well, I can see you, I suppose, or will be able to. Thanks for being here in this format. Hopefully next year, year 31, we'll be able to do this all again in person. I'm going to thank the Builders Exchange for having us work with them on these classes, as I said, now for about 30 years. And I want to thank a fellow you can't see who's sitting across from me here, Tom Chick. Tom is with Real World IT Solutions and is our resident IT guru and is kind of running the show here. If there are any problems that you have, Tom tells me you can ask about it or place it in the chat window. It'll come to his attention then. The suggestion is also that you mute your microphone. That way we won't pick up any background noises or sounds. If you have a question, you can ask it in the chat window, or you can unmute your mic. So Tom, I'm just going to ask you a question. If you can check this out for me, because I can't see the participants on here. So maybe you can push the magic buttons for that. And that will help me get a little better perspective on who's out there looking at me, so I can be looking at you as well. Mechanics liens are what I call typically a piece of the action, or at least a way to get a piece of the action. It's a mechanism. Here we go. Are they going to come on their pictures or not? All right. Okay. Well, you're all hiding from me, so welcome anyway. The question with the mechanics lien is, how can you use this tool to get a piece of the action or a piece of somebody else's action with regard to either a project that's a private job and a piece of property, or a public job and a fund of money? Is it the right tool to use? Is it going to do you any good at all? Is it a waste of money? And if you decide to do it, what do you need to know to get it done? So what we do with this class every year is we talk about what I call the mechanics of mechanics liens, what they are, the differences between public liens and private liens. You should have a handout that I understand you should be able to access on your screen, right, Tom? It's in the chat window. So the handout is only about 14, 15 pages long, and I'm going to follow through this. You're welcome, obviously, to, I assume they can print it out whenever they want to. Okay. You can print it out whenever you want, make notes or what have you. I'm going to talk about who can file a lien, how to file a lien, some important timing issues that you really need to know about. This is a good class for your accounts receivable people, because the idea is to give you adequate information so that you can mechanize filing a mechanics lien or maintaining the information to make it easier if the time comes when you decide, yeah, we're going to file a mechanics lien, or we're going to call the lawyer and have the lawyer do it for us. The more information you keep current and assemble with regard to the project, with regard to the receivable, it's going to make whoever files it for you, it's going to make their life easier, which ought to make their invoice to you less. So I would keep that in mind. We're going to talk about payment bonds, labor and material payment bonds on mostly public, but also from time to time on private projects. And we'll be discussing the difference between using a payment bond when you're not getting paid versus using a mechanics lien when you're not getting paid. I would estimate probably about an hour or so, maybe a little longer. It depends on the questions. If you unmute your mic or send a question, Tom will see it and he'll read it off to me, and we'll deal with those things as we go along. You know, having had a close relationship with the Builders Exchange and representing them for many decades, I always say when we do these classes, if, you know, tomorrow or a week from tomorrow, a question comes to mind, you've got a point or a question about something with regard to the class, send me an email, give one of us a call. Nobody's going to send you a bill for answering a couple of questions about a particular situation you might have. Okay, it's all part of what we do with the exchange and with you as the members. So looking at the handout and starting at the beginning on page 1, I want to discuss a little bit about the difference between a private improvement mechanics lien and a public improvement mechanics lien. There are those two general categories. What they do for you is different. A mechanics lien on a private job is like a mortgage lien on your house or your building you might own. You take a mortgage from a bank, you get a loan. They give you money, you buy your office building, you buy your house, and they file a mortgage against the property. The mortgage is for the mortgage they file is for the amount of the loan. It's evidenced by a promissory note, and that mortgage gives that bank a piece of the action with regard to your real property. So on a private job, a mechanics lien does the same thing. Mechanics lien is filed against a private improvement. It could be a house, it could be any kind of building, it could be a shopping mall, and gives the lienor a filed interest in that property, so that if something is done with the property, a sale, a refinance, your lien will show as an encumbrance on the property, and most of the time, some lender is going to require somebody to do something about it. If you're a subcontractor or a second-tier sub, if you're a supplier, and you file a mechanics lien, in all likelihood, the owner or developer is going to go to the GC or the CM that you're working for and is going to say, what's going on here? You have to do something about this mechanics lien. So it can certainly get attention from people, be it private or public. So that's a private lien has that immediate effect. It's immediate as of when it's filed. A public lien does not grab real property, if you will. In the Old English common law, we learned that the sovereign, if you watch Game of Thrones, right, the sovereign, the guy on the throne there is like immune. He can't be sued. Nobody can come and take the sovereign's property unless you kill him. So on a public lien, the sovereign is generally immune. The public entity is immune from having you come and file an interest against their real property. You can't do that. So a public lien could be a public project like a school district, a city, a village, a town, a hamlet, any kind of municipal entity, a county, a state, and on goes the list. So you file a lien on a school project. You don't get a lien on the property of the school itself. What you get is a lien on the fund of money that the public owner is holding on behalf of the GC or prime contractor. Okay? It's a big difference. One gives you an interest in property. If the property's sold, something's going to happen. The other is you grab somebody's fund of money. Hopefully when you file that public lien, there is enough money owed from the public owner to the GC or prime contractor to cover that mechanics lien. We'll talk about that a little bit later in some detail when we talk about a thing called the Lien Fund. So that's generally a difference between public liens and private liens. If questions come up, please send the message through and Tom will flag me and I'll look at it on my screen here and we'll answer them. Who can file a mechanics lien? Well, probably if you're listening, you can file a mechanics lien. If you're a GC, a CM, design professionals in certain circumstances. Material manufacturer and manufacturer's rep. If you're a subcontractor, a subcontractor, you can probably file mechanics lien. New York has a little glitch in the law that a supplier to a supplier can't file a mechanics lien. So if you're one of them, you might have to look for other remedies. For instance, if you're a manufacturer and you sell your property or you sell your things through a rep, if the rep only sells it in turn and does not install the thing that's being sold, then you as the manufacturer might not, in that pecking order scenario, have the ability to file a mechanics lien. Who can file a lien? Moving along, we have how to file mechanics lien. And the first thing I talk about there on page 4 is something that I mentioned just a few moments ago, and that is a thing called the Lien Fund. It's one of the most important things for you to please understand when we're talking about mechanics liens. This applies to public liens. It applies to private liens. And here's how it works. Not all states are what we call a lien fund state. New York State is a lien fund state. If you're a let's say you're a second tier sub, and you have to file a mechanics lien against a project, public or private, in order to secure a situation of non-payment for your invoices. Okay? So you file that mechanics lien on pick a date, June 1st of whatever the year is. You file your mechanics lien on June 1st. Your lien's $100,000. At the time you file your mechanics lien, you're a second tier sub. The time you file your mechanics lien, the GC owes their sub $50,000. So you filed a $100,000 mechanics lien as the second tier on a date when the GC owes your upline entity, the first tier sub, $50,000. Your $100,000 mechanics lien only attaches to that money in that fund of money or lien fund as between the GC and the first tier sub. It's called a lien fund. Doesn't seem right, doesn't seem fair. What, it's not right, Ed. Why is it that way? You're remodeling your kitchen. You hire a contractor to remodel your kitchen. It's a nice kitchen. It's a $40,000 kitchen, okay? By June 1st, you've paid your contractor who's remodeling your kitchen in full. Last check is written, 40 grand. 2 months later, you find out that the company he bought the cabinets from never got paid, and that's $12,000. They file a mechanics lien. You've already innocently and in good faith paid your contractor in full. So in that example, the cabinet supplier's mechanics lien is not going to be able to attach to your property because the lien fund as between you and the guy who did your kitchen is zeroed out, okay? Back to my example. You filed a $100,000 mechanics lien on a date when the GC owes your upline entity, the first tier sub, $50,000. Your lien only attaches to that $50,000. If two other mechanics lienors file their liens on that same date, June 1st, and they've got $100,000 mechanics liens, you've got three $100,000 mechanics liens attaching to only $50,000 and maybe taking a piece of that 50 apiece, okay? If on that same June 1st, your $100,000 mechanics lien is filed and the GC owes the first tier sub $500,000, your lien's covered, okay? Your lien is covered by an adequate lien fund. That's what the lien fund is. As it goes down, it shrinks. As between the owner and the GC, there's a lien fund. Between the GC and the sub, there's a lien fund. Between the sub and his vendor, there's a lien fund. It goes all the way down, it just sort of funnels down. And as the project moves along, obviously that fund of money up above you, or those funds of money up above you, are going to be shrinking. As payment applications are made, as payment applications are paid, there will be a time when, in all likelihood, that lien fund will be so small that it might not provide coverage for your lien. What good is that? Well, or why does it bother you? You know, if you're not paid, a lien is one thing you can do. It's not the only thing you can do, okay? You can always bring an action, a breach of contract action, what they call an action on the debt, to collect that unpaid money. Okay, that's off in its own world. You assume for non-payment. Okay, you can do that. Okay. But what if the guy you sue gets up one morning and decides, I think I'm going to go to Paraguay. So they pack up everything and they leave with nothing behind, or they simply file bankruptcy. Okay, if you've sued them, most of the time in a bankruptcy, you're out of luck if that happens. Okay, you're out of luck. You're not going to get much. However, it may be that if you file the mechanics lien, that the mechanics lien may provide you a better opportunity to bring a foreclosure, which is a thing that's similar to but different than suing them for the debt. breach of contract, a foreclosure of the lien, is not always stopped by a bankruptcy. So it can provide you some relief that way. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it always does. It's a bunch of legal things that could or it couldn't, but generally speaking, it at least gives you a better shot in the event of a bankruptcy. So file a mechanics lien. If you feel any lack of confidence in the ability of whoever you're working for or whoever they're working for, if you feel lack of confidence in their solvency, their ability to pay their debts, a lien might be the best way to go. But when we tell you here in a few minutes about the deadlines to file mechanics liens, which I'm going to do, please remember that even though you may have a certain number of months to file a mechanics lien on a public job or on a private job, as the lien fund goes down, the effectiveness of your mechanics lien can be reduced as the lien fund gets smaller. So you might look at the law book or look at the lawyer and your lien was filed in time under the time requirements in the lien law. But because the lien fund was paid down, it might not do you any good. So please factor that into the equation. When you diary the deadlines I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, remember the lien fund, okay? Back in the handout, again, if there's any questions, fire away. Page 4, we talk about where and how your mechanics liens are filed. On a private project, a mall, what have you, maybe a museum, a home, your mechanics lien is filed with the county clerk's office. Some small fee, the lien gets filed with the county clerk, and all is good. If it's a public job, the lien is filed with the public agency, say a school district. It would be filed with the superintendent of schools, the financial officer of the school, and my general rule is more is better. So if you have address for a school board president, you send it to them as well. If you're going to file a lien, more is better. Say, although you file it in a certain place, county clerk, school district, town, what have you, get the word out there that you haven't been paid. There's no reason not to send a copy. I can't think of any. To the project design professional, to the construction manager, to whoever you know that might have some influence or be involved in the payment chain upline, send the lien out. Send the lien out. Now, on a private project, top of page 5, on a private project, private commercial project, you've got 8 months to file mechanics lien, safely measured from when you last provided labor or when you last provided materials for the project. Okay, labor includes extras. It includes punch list. It does not include warranty. So if you're off of a job on June 1st and you get called back 6 months later for a warranty issue and you send a couple of workers out there and they fix the thing for a few days, that warranty work does not restart your 8-month clock. Okay. So accounts receivable people, this is where you need to be in tune with the field, with the project managers. There's got to be an information flow between the two of you so that you are aware when the job is substantially complete, when the job is final complete, when the last work was out there. Because you've got to take that information, you've got to put it in your diary, in your calendar system, so that you have the 8 months diaried for when that expires. Always remember the lien fund, right? You're always going to remember the lien fund, but you've got the 8 months. If you're a supplier and you supply your last thing, okay, your last light fixtures, your last carpet, your loaded block, whatever it is, on June 1st, that's your last date. Measure your 8 months from that date. But do yourself a favor and do your lawyer a favor. Just before I started this, excuse me, I was on the email with Patty back at my office. And the emails involved 2 mechanics liens. One that we filed for a very good client from Toronto for $400,000. They called us a week before their 8 months expired. Okay. And we had to file it in Manhattan. Okay. So that can be even a little bit crazier. Don't wait until a week before your 8 months expires, please. Okay. Diary it back a month so it shows up on your calendar system at 7 months or 6.5. Give yourself a break, give your lawyer a break. That, $400,000, whatever it was, mechanics lien we had to file with a week to go in Manhattan, got filed, but it took a lot of extra hustle and a lot of extra time. Okay. So if you're going to do it right, diary it back. If it is a residential project, that 8 months is not 8 months, it's 4 months instead. But the same issues apply. Lien Fund, and don't wait till you got a week left before you call the lawyer. Okay. Public projects have a different timing mechanism. So if you're on a public job, don't think about 8 months, don't think about 4 months. For most of you on a public job, Tom's coming around, you want this?
Just for a second.
He's stealing my iPad. On a public job, and your deadline tends to be more favorable for most of you. You'll see why in a minute. He's got, oh, there are questions coming through. Well, good, you all get a candy bar. Are there questions? Yeah. On a public job, you have to have your lien filed within 30 days after completion and acceptance of the work by the public owner. That's a kind of recent change that made that deadline more forgiving. So obviously you can see, let's say you're the site contractor. You're going to be in and out. You're going to come back and do punch, but you're going to be out of there earlier than the guy who's doing the floor coverings, okay, or the person that comes in and does the landscaping. So on that private job, that site contractor is going to have to worry a little bit more about their 8 months. On that public job, they all get that 30 days from completion and acceptance by the owner. Always keeping in mind, the ever-shrinking lien fund might not be your best friend. Someone asked, what defines warranty versus punch? Seems to always be a gray area. It's not really always a gray area. A punch list is simply work being performed either in your base contract scope of work or extra. That is the initial performance of the work. You haven't done it before. You're doing it for the first time. You do that work. Warranty, typically, warranties don't begin to run until substantial completion. So by the point you're at substantial completion, 95% or so, okay, by the time you're at substantial completion, all that other stuff is done. There'll be punch list, but punch list is before commissioning. Well, you commission the HVAC system, okay? Things are up and running and you're testing and you're balancing, okay? And you're giving instruction on the operations of the thing, right? That's still base contract scope of work for you if you're an HVAC person, okay? Substantial completion comes along, final completion comes along. 10 months later, an air handling unit blows out. It's warranty. You come back, okay? It wasn't work that you did as part of your base contract or extras scope of work. So I hope that helps a little bit in terms of that distinction between base contract and warranty work. Again, if you're tracking, depending upon how you enter time, how you time card your time, how your people record their time, there ought to be entries in your system, whatever your job cost accounting is for tracking labor. There ought to be entries for performing punch list. And if somebody has to go back on a warranty call for doing warranty. And if there isn't, you might want to think about doing that because it's a better way, in my view, to run your cost accounting so you know what burdens are on the job and where they are. So there's that one. Okay. As questions pop up, we'll answer them, but you guys are quiet today. So I talked about the deadlines for a private commercial job For a private residential job, 8 months, 4 months. For a public job, 30 days within 30 days after completion and acceptance by the public owner. There are other things out there. What do I mean? Things that are kind of hybrid or combination projects. For instance, an IDA project was a puzzle for a long time. Nobody really knew what they were. So they came along and they changed the Mechanics Lien law to say that an IDA project is private. It's going to be a private job. But there are still projects out there. Our firm has, I think, three Mechanics Liens on a project within the general geographic area that's kind of gone bad. For 3 or 4 different clients, we've got liens ranging anywhere from about, I think, 400,000 or 500,000 down to 40,000, 50,000 range on a job where there is a question. Is this a public job for a county, or is it a private job for a developer who's, getting money from a county? What is this? The safe thing to do, if you don't know, is do both. There's no giant hand out there that's going to stop you from filing both a private improvement mechanics lien and a public improvement mechanics lien. So if your lawyer isn't sure, if you're not sure, file both, okay? You can do it, just do it. Good. Rolling on to page number 6. We talk about the duration of the mechanics lien. Your liens are good for a year. Private commercial job, public works job, your lien's going to be there for a year. You diary it. Don't leave it up to just the lawyer to do. Diary it. It's your money, okay? It's your lien. Put it in your system. For a private job, for a public job, you get one free, if you will, renewal. It's not really free. Somebody will probably charge you to do it, but they shouldn't be charging you much because it's simply filing a document extending the mechanics lien, okay? It's not rocket science. And that extension will last for another year. So I say you get one for a year. You get one extension. After that, you got to get court permission to extend the mechanics lien. By that point in time, 2 years after you filed, you really ought to have probably done something to collect this debt anyway, okay? So it shouldn't be an issue. But just as when you get your information and you're diarying your 8 months, you're going to actually put it in your system for 7. Don't wait to the last minute to think about renewing your mechanics lien. Back it up a month, 4 to 6 weeks, back it up. So that you've got time to run it up the flagpole where you work, talk to the principals, the owners, do you want to renew the lien? And then get it out to whoever is going to be renewing the lien on your behalf. Frankly, there's no reason you can't do it on your own, okay? If you have the form developed, you really don't need to pay a lawyer to do that, okay? But give yourself time to get it done, okay? So that's the duration of the lien. So we've talked at this point about the public lien, private lien differences, and how they have different deadlines and they get filed in different places, and kind of come full circle down to how long they last, what's the duration of the life of the lien, how do you renew it, and when it expires. Looking back in the handout, on page 6, I have a list of items that mechanics liens require. Section 9 of the lien law, which is mentioned there. This is a list for private improvement mechanics liens, but it lists information that's handily maintained on a public job as well. If you look at the very, very, very back on page 14, you'll find a piece of paper. And it's a thing that we developed over a number of years. That we've given to many of our clients for managing the information that you need to have. So if time comes for mechanics lien, you'll have it maybe in one place, or at least all in one folder. One is Pay attention to contract notice clauses. We're going to talk about that in a different class. But contracts have clauses that require you to give claims within a certain amount of time. Track them. Okay? Look at them. Write them down. Summarize your account. Keep it active. Changes. You know, if you're filing Mechanics Lien and you've got $500,000 in change orders that everybody signed and is happy about, but you got another $200,000 that you say are extra work that either haven't been agreed to or just haven't been signed yet, you're going to want to lien for them, okay? So do that. The way I look at it is if your claim for an extra is meritorious, if it's got a tie-in to the project plans and specs, i.e. it's not there, file the lien for it. Include that in your Mechanics Lien. You go down the list, you know, the names of the upline entities, number 6 right there. A lien has to say when you first supplied labor and when you last supplied labor, when you first supplied materials or when you last supplied materials. So track that information. Use the form if you want. It's here, it's free, use it. Okay, scope of work, obviously. Suppliers, who did you supply to? Item number 8. 9 is because we do work across the US, we have a number of Canadian clients, so we do their work in like multiple states. 9 on this lien management data document on page 14 is a little bit different. And I want to explain why, because this may be important if you work in other states as well. Some states require multiple steps to file a Mechanics Lien. Some states, like New York, require one step. Okay, in New York, to file Mechanics Lien, you file the Mechanics Lien. You're experts, you now know how to do that. You go on down to the county clerk's office or you file your public lien wherever it goes and your lien is filed. That's all you have to do. Other states have a 2-step process where you have to file something like a notice of furnishing early in the job, and then the actual Mechanics Lien much later. The 2-step states require a notice of furnishing or something like that, it may have a different name, to be filed either in some instances before you begin the work / before you supply your materials, or within a certain time period, excuse me, of when you began. So in a 2-step state, I used Ohio as an example, you have a certain number of days from when you start. It might be 30 days, some states it might be 60. You've got to file a notice of furnishing. And then you file the lien later on, okay? In the 2-step states, if you don't do step 1, you don't get step 2, okay? Simple as that. On the 2-step states, you've got to do both steps. Your Mechanics Lien is no good. And that's why 9A talks about a thing called a pre-lien notice. That's who that is for. In New York, you're not going to be worried about 9A. If you're just working in New York, more power to you. And then payment bonds, number 10, we're going to talk about those in a little while. And we're doing very well time-wise. So that's the contents of the lien. Next on page 7 is something that is worth knowing about. It's probably as important as Lien Fund and understanding this are Lien Law Trusts. So, you know about wills, right? You write a will, you die. Your money goes to people according to your will. There's also a thing out there called a trust. And the example that I've given for years is your great Aunt Agatha dies. You're saying, what is Sheats talking about? We're not here for wills and trusts. Well, this is an analogy. Your great Aunt Agatha dies. Aunt Agatha had a lot of money and a lot of cats, but she left a lot of money to all of you people who are her nieces and nephews, okay? Good for you. She put it into trust. So the trust is going to appoint a trustee. Maybe it's me. I'm the trustee. You are the beneficiaries of the trust. Agatha created the trust. She's gone. The trust document says what my powers are as trustee. So maybe I get to buy each one of you, or I give you money to buy a new car every 3 years. Tom looked up when I said that. He wants to get a new car. To pay for your college educations or your kids' educations, you get the idea, okay? So I'm the trustee. So you're the beneficiary, and it's my duty by law to distribute Aunt Agatha's money pursuant to the trust document. If I decide I want a new car, and there's a lot of money in there anyway, so I'm just going to take $50,000, go buy a new car, nobody will notice. What I've done as a trustee is I've stolen money from you, the beneficiaries. Okay, that's a larceny. I could go to jail. Okay. You could sue me. Okay. If I take that money from your trust, you're the beneficiaries. Okay. So, Aunt Agatha, fine. What does it have to do with the lien law? Lien law Article 3A is New York's trust fund statute. New York is a trust fund state. Not all states are trust fund states. Of the states that are trust fund states, I'm here to tell you, having done this for 36 years, New York's is the most powerful trust fund statute of all 50 states when it comes to giving rights to subcontractors, to suppliers, to contractors on projects. And here's how it works. It's a lot like Aunt Agatha. According to the trust fund statute, I'm the GC. Tom over there, Tom, is the owner, okay? You're my subs. Tom is the owner. He pays me on a project. I send an application for payment for $2 million. I get my $2 million minus retainage. For that same time period, that same month, you all are billing me, okay? So I get 1.8 million in the door, and you've billed me for your work for that time frame as well. Now, it just so happens I'm a little bit behind on that job and that job and that job, okay? So you guys can wait, right? Because you're all nice and patient subcontractors. So you can wait a few more months because I got to pay off that guy and that guy and that guy. So I take that money that Tom paid me and I do that, okay? According to the lien law, the money that he pays me for the project are trust funds, just like Aunt Agatha's money in Aunt Agatha's trust. It's the same thing, really is. I have an obligation. The lien law says I'm the trustee. The lien law says you're the beneficiaries of the trust. The trust is measured by that money that's in my hands. And the lien law section 3A says I have to use that money that Tom gives me. You can give me the 1.8 million tomorrow, buddy. I have to, a check's fine, to first pay contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, workers who are contributing to the improvement, who are working on the project, okay? If I'm a bad guy and I take that money and I pay him and him and I pay him, or I buy a yacht on the intercoastal waterway in Florida, I've taken that money from you. It's a larceny in the same way it would have been had I taken it from Aunt Agatha's trust. Okay? The lien law frowns upon this thing. And if I do that with that 1.8 million, then I've diverted trust assets. It can be criminal. It can be a felony, typically is. I can be civilly exposed. Let's say that Aunt Agatha appoints my law firm as the trustee, okay? But I'm the guy. So Aunt Agatha's beneficiaries could sue my law firm and me personally, okay? As could you, as a beneficiary of a lien law trust, you could sue not only Ed's Speedy General Contracting, Inc., But you could also sue Ed if I'm the guy who participated in diverting that trust fund money to other people, okay? This is a big deal. This is a good thing. Most states don't have this type of law. The ones that do don't have the teeth that New York's has. It's called Lien Law Article 3A. That's how it works. Now, whether you bring a Lien Law Article 3A trust fund action or not is something you have to be very thoughtful about and look at it from a cost-benefit analysis. Here's why. If you sue for breach of contract for non-payment, it's one thing. Suing to foreclose a mechanics lien can be more involved, a lot more procedural issues. Suing to foreclose a mechanics lien, generally speaking, is going to be more expensive than suing to recover a debt. I'm sorry about the cough. I'm scratchy. I don't have COVID. I'm safe. So suing to bring a Lien Law 3A action is probably going to be more expensive than those other two things. And there are a whole bunch of procedural legal reasons why that I don't need to exhaust this afternoon. I can, but just to tell you that that really is the case, okay? Proving a diversion can be a complicated thing to do. It might require expert witnesses who are forensic accountants. We have some that work with the firm. It can be a big deal. If it involves more people, if it involves more lawyering, that means they're going to be paying more money. So if somebody owes you $30,000, you might or might not want to bring a lien law trust fund action, okay, when you can just focus on an action to collect the debt, a breach of contract action. Talk to your lawyer about it. Make sure they've really done these things before, not making it up, okay? 3A actions can be great. The Noble Road Wind Farm, some number of years ago, we had 6 or 7 subcontractors, maybe some of you, I don't know, and who were out $1.6 million. Okay. We brought a lien law diversion action on that one against the GC, which was a local company. And we got a fund of money that we got that was just under 1.8. Everybody got paid with some to boot to pay their interest as well, okay? But that was a lot of money. That was 1.6 million, okay? We need to be thoughtful before you decide to bring out Lien Law Article 3A action because they're more involved. One of the ways they're more involved is the law says you got to bring them as a class action, okay? That means in most instances you're not alone. There's other parties who are also victims of this. You have to put on notice, like fellow suppliers, excuse me, and they've got to be brought into the action, okay? So more parties in a lawsuit means more lawyers in a lawsuit. More lawyers in a lawsuit means more people got to pay lawyers in a lawsuit, which we kind of discourage. So please, if you're evaluating a debt, make the right decision about which of these options you're going to pursue. A Lien Law 3A action might be one. I don't know. I have been involved in a couple 3A instances where district attorneys got involved and threatened criminal prosecution where people were really diverting trust fund assets. That can be a powerful thing. In a 3A action, it's possible to get your attorney's fees out of the class funds. It's also possible to get punitive damages against the bad guy. So when I take the money Tom paid me, that 1.8 million, I do my thing over here, okay? You might also be able to get punitive damages from me. That means damages because I've been a bad guy. Another possible benefit to keep in mind is there are instances when if I file bankruptcy, it might not stop you from suing me. Usually a bankruptcy, if I file bankruptcy, there's a thing called the bankruptcy stay, right? Boom, you all got to stop. You can't sue me anymore. You have to wait for the bankruptcy to happen and get pennies on the dollar. There are ways in a bankruptcy to pursue the debtor, even in light of the bankruptcy, when you've got a 3A claim. It's not a guaranteed thing. Bankruptcy judges have a lot of discretion, but it's out there. It's a possibility. Okay. So that's kind of a quick horseback ride, checking my time, through the Lien Law Trust Fund provisions, through Lien Law Article 3A. Okay. This is the fewest questions I've ever had in one of these classes. This is great. I'm doing such a good job and you all understand everything. I don't. In the handout, we've kept the handout short. You see that. The philosophy being you need to know what you need to know. You don't need to know a bunch of lawyer stuff. Okay, the lawyers will do the lawyer stuff. But if you want to know when you got to get a lien filed, you got 14 pages to find it in. You'll find it. Okay, it's not a 30-page, 300-page, whatever book. So we've kept this as kind of a horseback ride type of philosophy. We're giving you information you need, but we always try not to give you too much because good for you, you're not lawyers. But on page 8, I talk about a couple of lien law tools you might want to know about. And the first one relates to the Lien Law Article 3A Trust Fund issue. The lien law gives you a tool by which you can demand of me, as the trustee, a full sworn accounting of all the money that I handled on the project. Okay. So you get an accounting of what I've billed, of what I've been paid. You get an accounting of all the money that's been billed to me and all the money that I paid out on the project, okay? And more. But that's a lot of stuff. And, we will get these from upline entities and we do our own audits in-house and track where the money has gone. And you can often find evidence of a diversion. And at the same time, it helps make the decision, do I want to bring a 3A action too, when you get that information. Another one, if somebody files a mechanics lien against you, you can, under section 38 of the lien law, page 9, demand an itemization of the mechanics lien, so you can serve a section 38 demand on them. They have a certain amount of time to give you a sworn itemized statement of what the mechanics lien is all about, what's in there, okay, what's the labor, what's the materials. If they don't, then you can get the lien discharged, which is a good thing. That's the itemization. Let's see, the payment bonds is up next, but I'm going to try to just sort of reflect for a minute and think about other mechanics lien type things. Keep in mind that a mechanics lien, like a mortgage, has to be foreclosed to force somebody to give you money with it. And mechanics lien foreclosure, like a mortgage foreclosure, requires anybody else who has filed an interest against the property being brought into the lawsuit. So if I'm foreclosing a lien for you, you're one of my subs, and there are 3 other mechanics liens by other subs, those lienors have to be brought into the lawsuit. Keep in mind that with a lien foreclosure, if there's a lender, private job, I have to bring them in as well, and their rights might have priority over yours as lienors, okay? So that can have an influence upon your business decision. Is not so much filing, but is foreclosing a mechanics lien the smart thing for me to do, given these little issues with regard to how it has to be done. Like with the 3A action, the trust fund action, other beneficiaries, which means basically sub-suppliers have to be brought into the lawsuit. Always remember, more parties means more lawyers means more time. It's going to take longer and probably cost more money. So you want to find what can be the most efficient way for you to get your money. Hopefully the people that owe you the money are solvent, but I know they're not always. Which leads to payment bonds, which is page 10. Now, page 10, a labor material payment bond. They exist, we are most used to them existing on public works projects, okay? They also sometimes exist on private jobs. We're going to talk about that a little later. We're going to talk about public jobs first. In New York's state finance law, it's called Section 137 of the state finance law, most public improvements that you're going to be working on will have a labor and material payment bond. Now, there's some exceptions, like emergency jobs, like prison jobs, okay, can be an emergency. I had a roof blow off of a prison once. That was kind of an emergency, okay? People wanted a roof. But a payment bond can be a much more friendly way for a subcontractor, for a supplier to recover a debt than a mechanics lien. So obviously, we're still talking about payment bonds and public projects. Okay? Why can it be better? Well, for one, you remember all that stuff that I talked about with regard to the Lien Fund, you know, the ever shrinking pyramid, upside down pyramid of money? How that can limit your ability to recover through a lien foreclosure? None of that applies to payment bonds. Forget it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the upline entity, the GC, the prime contractor, whose bond you are suing, it doesn't matter if they paid everybody. Doesn't matter. Okay? You still got to get paid, and the bond can still be there for you. That's a good thing. Also, under the state finance law, the court has the discretion to award you your attorney's fees. The court has discretion. I didn't say the court must or the court will. Okay, the court has the option to do it. If the court thinks that the bonding company is jerking you around, well, they never do that. If the bonding company is being unfair, not paying money that is admittedly due, then you might get some attorney's fees. Okay? Interest is there as well. Now, in the world of payment bonds, you need to know about a statute of limitations. Let's take a minute. Statutes of limitation are the amount of time you've got to bring a lawsuit. Okay? If you wait until after the statute of limitations, the time that you have to bring a lawsuit has expired, you're done, forget it, you lose, go home, okay? If you're late, the lawsuit will be dismissed. So you got to be aware of the statute of limitations on a payment bond. I'm getting there. There are certain instances when, in addition to that, you have to worry about giving notice to the upline entities, okay? A nice rule of thumb is give notice all the time, but we'll talk about when it is required. Now, the statute of limitations on a payment bond is typically going to be 1 year from the date of completion and acceptance of the job by the owner. That's a change too, not a recent change, but within the past X number of years. So you've got to take out your pen or your computer and keep that in mind as well. Okay. Chances are, if you're a sub, if you're a supplier, chances are, if you measure that year from when you were last out there, doing what work, kind of like the lien thing, base contract and changes, punch list, chances are you'll be good. Okay. But if you use that for your 1 year measurement, you know, the other thing, don't wait a year, right? Don't wait a year. If you're late, you lose. No payment bond. Unhappy. Okay. So diary it back so that you can make this decision. It means bringing a lawsuit. Okay. You got to sue the bonding company in time or you lose the suit against the bonding company. Let me take a little aside and talk about statutes of limitation. Okay. If you have signed a contract from a general contractor that probably is one of ours, there's a good likelihood there's a 1 year statute of limitations in your contract too. Ah, what? Yeah. You know, there's a statute of limitations to sue for breach of contract in New York State. It's a long time. It's 6 years. But the law permits parties to a contract to reduce that time. We have had cases that we've gotten dismissed that were brought under a subcontract that has a 6-month statute of limitations. Case was brought after that 6 months, cases were dismissed, okay? The statute of limitations that's in a contract is going to be in there somewhere. It's going to be in those general conditions. So you got to look for it. We're going to have a couple classes further down the line about contract clauses and so forth. We'll do more of that then. We'll show you what they look like. But statutes of limitations that are in contracts are usually going to be under the disputes clause. They might be under the miscellaneous clause, which is usually toward the end of the subcontract. So please look for them and keep them in mind, okay? Y'all have worked hard enough to build your companies, to keep them in business. Don't miss a $100,000 non-payment because a GC or whoever's upline from you, could have been an owner, has a 1-year statute of limitations and you blow it. Okay, so please look for those. Now, payment bonds, 1 year, completion and acceptance. Okay, fine. However, if you look on page 11, and if you're the second or first full paragraph there, I talk about the notice requirement because the statute, if you're the first tier sub, all you have to worry about is that 1 year statute of limitations. If you're down a tier or another, okay, which might be a supplier, a manufacturer, a second tier sub. In short, if you don't have a contract with the GC or the prime that is bonded, then you have to give notice upline within 120 days of your last labor or materials, okay? You got to do that. If you don't do that, you lose. Party's over. You're not going to be able to sue on the bond, okay? Please pay attention to this. Notice it's discussed in the handout. Send it certified mail, return receipt requested. Tell them what you did. Tell them who your contracts were with. Tell them what you billed. Tell them what they owe you. And tell them you want to get paid. Who do you tell? You tell the general contractor or prime contractor that has the bond. You tell the bonding company. Well, I'm remote. Okay, I supplied air handling units to a guy who supplied them whatever day they put them up. I'm remote from the bonded company. How do I know who the bonding company is? Nobody's telling me these things. Public job, send a request to the public entity under the Freedom of Information Law and get a copy of the bond. Just do it. Don't wait. Do it early. Okay? It's okay. Get a copy of the labor material payment bond, and then you'll know who the bonding company is too. If your life is as exciting as mine and you have nothing to do but read things like contracts, read a bond sometimes because the bonds have terms and conditions. You might want to see what they look like. They can add to or be more favorable when it comes, excuse me again, when it comes to statute of limitations or when it comes to notice. What do I mean by more favorable? Well, a bond might say, okay, you get 2 years to sue. In New York, if the bond gives you a better statute of limitations than what the statute gives you, that 1 year, you get the benefit of the better one. So maybe you want to get a copy of the bond because a lot of bonds do that. Okay. I have a bond situation right now for one of my second tier subs where the bond does not require that notice to be given. That might be more favorable to my second tier sub because they waited too long. So, look, get a copy of the bond, just do it. Okay, get it early. Send a request under the Freedom of Information Law to the public entity, put it in the file, be happy. Listed in paragraph number 10 here on that lien management sheet. That is a horseback ride. Checking time, we're doing good on public works payment bonds. So let me tell you that sometimes private projects can have payment bonds too. It's rare, but it happens. I will say it seems to me it's been happening more in the past 10 years than in the preceding 26 years. Yeah, I tend to see them most often on private universities, banks and lenders, charitable entities like YMCAs, things like that. But any private entity can have a payment bond. The thing is, you might not know about it, and it's harder to get because there is no freedom of information law you can use on a private job. Call up the design professional, call up the construction manager, call up the owners, money people, find out if there's a bond. Okay. There is a, somebody says right here, we've had some trouble getting copies of payment bonds. What is the obligation of the owner and what are the repercussions for them? So you, let me finish, I'll come back. So on that private job, private bonded job, there is this statute that's kind of like in one of those law books that nobody ever looks at, but like boring people like me, that says on a private job that a private owner, so it might be, I did this to Niagara University, I did this to Utica College. If the private owner doesn't file that bond with their county clerk, and you have to sue the payment bond to get paid, then you have a statutory cause of action against the owner for your attorney's fees. So it was great because a number of years ago, there was a bunch of work at Utica College. There was a particular GC who went bad. We had a bunch of subclaims that Utica College had to pay my attorney's fees. We had one on Niagara University. Years ago, a hockey rink over there, one of my subs. Had to go to arbitration to get paid, got paid in full, made Niagara University, pay my attorney's fees. Good deal, right? Okay, private jobs only. Now, payment bonds and your question. You use the Freedom of Information Law and you send a request to the superintendent of schools and the business manager of the school, okay? And they stiff you, okay? They ignore you. What can you do? Against the school, not much, frankly. What you need to do in that instance is if you've made the request and you've made it again, and you've done all you can do for self-help, call the architect, call the CM, okay? And nobody's given you a copy of the bond, well, maybe it's now time to call a lawyer and get a letter, okay? But there really is no practical basis for you to make a claim against a public entity for not giving you a bond. You can make a claim against a public entity for not providing you the information under Freedom of Information Law, but that's not going to get you paid on the job. It's going to get an order from a court directing the public entity to give you the information, okay? Those things can take a while. So if you've tried, you've done the self-help things, again, call the architect, call the engineer, call the CM, write them, jump up and down, camp out on the hood of their truck. I had somebody do that once, really. And it doesn't work. You might want to get a letter from a lawyer, okay? Because you got to get the thing. So that's a horseback ride through payment bonds. You know about the statute of limitations, you know about the notice. If you've already forgotten it, it's in the handout. You can read it, what you need to know type stuff, okay? Talked about private payment bonds and the attorney's fees thing if the private owner doesn't file the payment bond with their county clerk's office. What's left to talk about? We've talked about so much, you've asked so little. I have a couple thoughts on the end here about what I call dealing with developers. It's a 2-page version of something that's really much bigger. But I'll ramble about it for a few minutes because I've gone over the hour, but give me 5 minutes. what we find with developers, what you, I'm sure, have found or have heard about with developers as well, and we could pick on mall developers, but it's all. Look, I have sued 3 Trump projects in New York City. Well, 2 in New York, 1 in New Rochelle. They all do this, is they create what's called a single asset entity or a job-specific entity. So Ed and Tom LLC, okay, we buy the land for the project. We take out the loan for the project. The project is owned by Ed and Tom LLC of Syracuse, not by Ed and Tom LLC, but by Ed and Tom LLC of Syracuse, okay? Ed and Tom LLC of Syracuse owns the property. They've got the loan on the property. Ed and Tom LLC and Ed and Tom are guarantors, but we don't own the thing. Well, you go to work for Ed and Tom LLC of Syracuse, and because we're bad guys, we stiff you, okay? So and not only do we stiff you, but remember, we're a single asset entity, so we have no bank. We have a draw on the loan, but we don't have money in the bank. We don't own equipment. We lease our employees. We lease our job trailer. Single asset entity's got nothing. The money entity is Ed and Tom LLC, not Ed and Tom of Syracuse LLC or Ed and Tom of Binghamton LLC. You get the idea, okay? You can really get screwed on these projects. Projects like that are where a lien might help you the most, okay? These developer projects. But there are some other little things you can do, because I have had numerous situations, okay? You know, these developers have a lot of people, cubicles and a lot of pieces of paper and a lot of different kinds of letterhead and all this sort of stuff. And some of our subs we've worked on these situations, we've had them do things like send an invoice to Ed and Tom LLC, not Ed and Tom of Syracuse LLC, and see how it gets paid. We have had them send, back in the day of faxes or emails to addressed to Ed and Tom LLC person. See who replies to it. If you can play the game back at them in such a way that you can make it look like you're maybe doing business with Ed and Tom LLC or Ed and Tom LLC of Syracuse, you might be able to open a door to bring in the asset entity, the moneyed entity, okay? I had one against an Ed and Tom LLC some years ago, well, not that many, where although the subcontracts were with Ed and Tom LLC of Syracuse, the change order letterhead was Ed and Tom LLC. Great, they screwed up. Take advantage of those things when they happen. If you can run the show in such a way that Ed and Tom LLC is answering your questions, is sending you letters, it gives you a little bit of a hook. Can't promise anything. Gives you a little bit of a hook to hook the entity that really has the money, Ed and Tom LLC. And there's a lot of other games you can play. They're going to play them with you. So get ready for them and come up with games you can play back. Well, it's been an hour and, golly, 10 minutes. And I told you it'd be about an hour. We've only had 2 questions. I've tried to give you a good horseback run through Mechanics Liens. We've given you the 14-page document, trying to be selective in what we put in there so that you find what you really need to know. And like I said earlier, not a bunch of lawyer stuff, because you don't care about that. You don't need to know about it. You need to know how long you have to do a thing. Okay, that's what you need to know. You need to know what goes into the thing. That's what this does. You need to know about Lien Law Trusts. You need to be able to show your boss what that's all about. They can read the thing. It's only a page, okay? If you have other questions, look us up. I've said before when I started, I'll just mention it again. Our involvement with the Builders Exchange is such, we're not going to send bills if we get questions from you folks. anytime in the future, okay? If you want to find something out, if you want to follow up, just give one of us a call. We're going to talk to you, okay? Send us an email. We're going to respond. Don't worry about it. And that being said, I'm done. So if you have other questions, you better hurry up because in a minute or two, hey, hi, Linda. Bye, Linda. I'm going to tell Tom to turn this thing off. So that being said, thanks for being a part of the Builders Exchange. Thanks for coming out for this seminar. And we're always here for you if you need us. Peace.